Hey guys, this is Locke. In this video, I'm going to do an in-depth review of Kris and also talk about the banner of Kris and Dellons and say if you should be pulling for them and give you some recommendations. So Kris is actually designed as a DPS support unit, so he will do some damage similar to Rachel, but really his role is to make other people, like the main damage dealers in your party, do even more damage. And that's similar to what Rachel does as well. Now, if you remember, Rachel is she was my main DPS when I started. So even though she's designed as a support DPS, she was still my main DPS because that's the best unit I had at the time. So Kris can similarly be used in a in that way, but by design he's actually intended to be a support DPS. So let's take a look at his skills so we can see in depth what he does. His passive increases the crit rate of all your allies. This is really like the bread and butter of Kris. The main reason you would want to bring him over Rachel would be because of this particular passive. There are other reasons you would want to bring him as well, but this is the main reason. His next skill, it decreases the target's defense by a percentage depending on the level. At level 20, it actually goes all the way up to 40%. And this is the exact same as Rachel's defense break skill. It also goes up to 40.6, and they don't stack. So if you're bringing both of them on the same team, most of the time it's a net DPS loss unless you don't have anyone better to bring. It's better to bring one or the other and bring like a main DPS unit and take advantage of their defense break to do an insane amount of damage. His next skill is just a damage skill. It does damage in an area. If there's many enemies in that area, the damage will be split. If there's only one enemy in that area, that one enemy will take all that damage, like 1,156% of damage, between all the units that are in that area at level 20. The next skill increases the combo chance. Now you might not know what combo chance does. Combo chance is actually whenever a unit attacks a normal hit to an enemy, the combo chance basically gives it a chance to attack twice. So if they have 100% combo chance, basically every normal hit will land twice on the enemy. So it's like 100% attack buff, but it's only on normal hits. This does not apply to skills. And then finally, his ultimate, it deals a percentage of damage. At level 20, it's almost 1500 to the target, and then it additionally has a chance to deal up to 300% more attack if based on the amount of the target's HP that you have reduced. It's not the best. Like I don't really like this ultimate as much as some of the others. Like it doesn't cause any status effect, and it doesn't cause any like debuffs like increased damage received or something like that. So it's not the best one, but really the main things about Kris is his passive and then also his defense decrease. So is he better than Rachel? Rachel has other skills as well that increase your party's ability to do damage. Like her passive increases the combo chance not of only herself but of the whole party, and she has this debuff which increases the damage received. So if you're just looking at it, in terms of skills, I think Rachel will actually increase the amount of damage that the boss receives. Arguably, I mean, Kris also does increase the crit chance, so maybe that increased crit chance might do more damage. But overall, I mean, they might be similar in terms of just looking at the skills, but the main difference really comes from their attacking distance. Like Rachel is a melee damage dealer, she will deal damage close up, whereas Kris is a long damage dealer. You can kind of see his damage range, like right here as he's attacking. He's able to avoid skill shots because he is a long range attacker. As you can see, I mean, he can keep his distance. It's easier for him to stay alive. So that's a main consideration you have to also think of. In future content, people say that there are content where it's hard to bring Rachel, but it's easier to bring Kris because of his long range. So keep that in mind. I've heard people from the Korean server say that he's irreplaceable. That you should definitely get him. He's like the best support DPS that you can have, and like you should must pull for him, and that's pretty close to what I recommend as well. And I especially highly recommend him if you have Miss Velvet, because Miss Velvet, she does so much more damage when you land a critical hit. So if you can get her crit rate up to 100%, she will just do phenomenal damage. And if you pair her with Kris, that is an easier way for her to increase her critical rate. So the two of them together will do a lot of damage. And also, if you look at Miss Velvet's skills, she doesn't have any defense break in her kit. So having somebody else provide that defense break for her will just overall increase her damage output. I hope a lot of people did get Miss Velvet. She was featured last week, or for the last 2 weeks. And if you did get her, I highly recommend getting Kris, because the two of them pair so well. I would say he is like 100% must pull if you have Miss Velvet. If you don't have Miss Velvet, I would still recommend him pretty highly. I would still say he's close to a must pull, if not a must pull. If you have Miss Velvet, it's a definite must pull. If you don't have Miss Velvet, I still give him high glowing recommendations. For Dellons, so when the game was launched, Dellons did a lot of damage, and the reason he did a lot of damage is because he is very easy to gear. Because he already has 100% crit rate, you don't need to give him crit gear, and whatever attack you give him, it is like amplified by his passive, because it's a guaranteed crit. So because of that, he does a lot of damage. If you have like a level 30 Dellons that is ungeared and a level 30 Miss Velvet that's ungeared, Dellons will probably outdamage and outperform Miss Velvet. However, as you progress in the game, and as Miss Velvet gets a high chance to crit, like say a 50% chance to crit or something, she will definitely outperform Dellons, because it comes down to her passive. Like basically, Dellons' passive gives him a guaranteed crit chance. So if you're assuming that all of his attacks do 150%, because that's the crit damage is 150% of normal attack, so he has like a 50% modifier to all of his stats, right? To all of his skills. But Miss Velvet, so she already gets that additional 50%, because everybody gets a 50% modifier to their crit damage, but she additionally gets 68% on top of that. So she will do like 120% damage extra, while Dellons only does 50% damage extra. But this is only on critical hits. So if Miss Velvet doesn't have a high crit chance, like if you only give her like say a crit set and that's 14% crit, and she doesn't have anything else that increases her crit damage, she will do 120% damage, but only on only 14% of the time, which it'll not outperform Dellons. Like Dellons will still be doing better, but if you can gear her up, if you can get your divinity levels up, if you can put her in crit formations and level up that crit formation, and she starts approaching 50% crit. If you pair her with Kris as well, and again approach 50% or higher crit rate, then she will start outperforming Dellons by like significantly, in my opinion. And also Dellons, like if you look at their ultimate, Dellons has an ultimate percentage that's lower than Miss Velvet, but he ignores 40% of the defense, whereas Miss Velvet doesn't have that. She just has a much higher scaling on her ultimate, but she doesn't have decreased defense. But again, if you pair her with Kris, Kris will provide that defense break for her anyway. So in addition to that, massive multiplier on her ultimate, she now gets Kris's defense break added to her. So she will be basically able to really utilize Kris with both of his his passive that increases the crit rate, and also the defense break, because she doesn't have any defense break on any of her skills. So she will really utilize him. Should you pull for Dellons? I wouldn't really recommend it, because I think okay, so the thing is, like, if you are starting and you don't have any other damage dealer besides Rachel, with the 7-day login, you'll get Karen. But Rachel is your main DPS, you don't have anything else, sure, then you can go for Dellons. Like, I think it'll probably be a safe bet to go for him, because you do need a damage dealer to progress in the game, and if you don't have anyone better, Dellons is pretty good, and he's also pretty good for starter players who don't have anything else because it's easy to gear. However, if you've been playing for a while, and if you have other damage dealers, like if you have Miss Velvet, uh, I don't recommend Dellons because Miss Velvet will outperform him, especially as you keep playing. If you progress for 2 more weeks or something, and you get those crit percentages into Miss Velvet, I don't recommend pulling for Dellons. Also, if you pulled for Kris, I also don't recommend pulling for Dellons because Kris, increases the crit rate of all allies. That's his main gimmick, right? And Dellons already has a 100% crit rate, so he's not going to take advantage of this skill whatsoever. So if you are planning to pull for Kris, which I highly recommend everyone to do so, I don't really recommend pulling for Dellons unless you just happen to not have any solid DPS units at all. Like if you have, I don't know, if you can get by with Kris and Rachel or something until you get a better DPS, I would just go with that. I didn't like most of my content with Rachel as the main DPS anyway, so you don't really need a dedicated DPS until you get to like very hard or something. So you don't, you can be patient and wait for Miss Velvet to come to you or one of the upcoming damage dealers to come to you. Yeah, I mean, Dellons is not a bad unit. He is pretty good. Just he's been outclassed by Miss Velvet because I think Miss Velvet is just a phenomenal unit. That's why Dellons has been outclassed. So those are my thoughts. Like I wouldn't really recommend Dellons for most people. I do highly recommend Kris for most people, and especially if you have Miss Velvet, I like 110% recommend that you get Kris. How should you gear Kris? So there are 2 ways to gear him. Because this skill has a skill cooldown of, actually it's probably more than 28 seconds. Let's take a look. Oh, it is 28 seconds. Okay, so it has a skill cooldown of 28 seconds, and it lasts, and the defense decrease debuff lasts for 20 seconds. So you can put the like this set, the cooldown, the decrease skill cooldown by 14% set on him to basically have a high uptime of this defense decrease on bosses and whoever else you're attacking. That's one way to build him. But if you happen to have one of these accessories, the time acceleration accessories, which basically decrease skill cooldown by 1 second based on however many attacks you do. Like if you only have one of these items, it's every 3 attacks it decreases skill cooldown by 1. That's all you really need to basically have close to 100% uptime on this debuff. So if that's the case and you have that, then you don't need to bring then you don't need to bring decrease skill cooldown set anymore because you already have that covered with one accessory. So in that case, you can actually go with the skill up set, which I believe Rachel has. Yeah, this gets, which would basically increase all your skill levels by 3. And this would give him a higher crit chance to everybody in the party and also increase the percentage of defense that you're decreasing for the boss. So those are the 2 ways that I would recommend you build him. I don't really recommend building him with like a crit set or a attack set, because he's not really meant to be the main DPS in your party. If you started and you just have him, you don't have Rachel yet, and you're using him as the main DPS, okay, then you can put a crit set on him. But he performs better with either a skill cooldown set or a skill up set. Those are the 2 that I would recommend that you gear him. As for Dellons, if you are going for him, there's only one real way to gear him, and that's with an attack set. The reason is because for most DPS you either go with crit or attack, and he doesn't benefit from crit rate at all because he has 100% crit rate. So you would definitely go with an attack set if you are planning to go with Dellons and play Dellons. PvP considerations. So he's not really meant for PvP. It's in the same way that Rachel is not meant for PvP. This is Kris I'm talking about, by the way. Sorry, I didn't mention that. So Kris is not really meant for PvP because he is basically a PvE character. He's used for doing extra damage to the bosses. If you saw my video that I released yesterday talking about PvP units, like one of the things that I mentioned at the very beginning is that the amount of damage you do, the higher your attack, that's not really a consideration for a good PvP character. You really want like CC, you really want like buffer removal, and you want survivability, and he has none of those. So he might do a lot of damage, and he might do, well, he doesn't do damage himself, but he might enable other people to do a lot of damage, but that's not really enough, and especially if it's just a single target, skill, because he's not decreasing the defense of the entire party. Like, it's not an AoE effect, it's just a single target effect. So it's very good for, PvE content when you're fighting bosses and you want to decrease their defense or increase the amount of damage you can do. And it's especially important because all the bosses have these like berserk timers, and if you don't kill them in 5 minutes, they're going to go berserk and they're going to wipe out your team. So you really need that for PvE. For PvP, he's not good. You can still use him, because I used Rachel for a while until I got somebody better. So you can still use him. You have to use whatever you have, right? Especially if you're a newer player that only has a few certain units. So you can use him, but he's not optimized for PvP. As for Dellons, I see a lot of people saying that he is great for PvP, but he does a lot of damage. Like, he jumps to the back with, what is it, one of these skills, I think the skill, and he does a lot of single target damage, and especially at like lower tiers where a lot of people are just under geared, he does a lot of damage because you don't really need to gear him well to do a lot of damage. However, once you start going up the tiers and you get better gears, Miss Velvet just outperforms him, because if her crit rate is high enough, I already mentioned that she will do more damage than him anyway. And the second thing is that she also has a defensive buff as well, which gives her stealth so that she can't be targeted. It increases her AoE resistances, like the amount of AoE damage she will be taking is reduced, and she also increases like her status resistances, so she won't be getting stunned or shocked or anything for 8 seconds. So in my opinion, like, she's a lot better PvP character. Dellons is good for the early game when it comes to damage output, but I think he's just been outclassed by Miss Velvet. So, I mean, you can, like, if you have him and you don't have Miss Velvet, and you don't know when you'll get Miss Velvet again, because, you have to kind of gamble on it, right? You don't know when you're going to pull her again because you just missed the banner, then you can go for him. But if you have Miss Velvet, I wouldn't think twice about pulling on him, because he might outperform her like at the very beginning when you're undergeared, but as soon as you start getting some crit gear in her, she outperforms in basically every way. So that's my review on these two units, and let me just take a look to see if I got anything interesting here. So I got a few gears, like I got 3 legendary gears, and I'm doing hard, the 3-star hard exploration. I thought I would just mention that, but no, I didn't get any legendary accessories, so that's too bad. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have other questions or comments, comment below, and I'll do my best to get back to you. Take care, guys. I will see you next time.